5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We are live. Coming to you live at Lichtman Live. Say what's up to the people, Dad.
Hey, we are going to talk about the tariffs, which are an extraordinarily important event for the United States and the world. Can't be overstated. But something extraordinary happened just a little while ago, just tonight, I believe. I
Right.
saw the story reported. Just when you think Donald Trump couldn't surprise you anymore, he comes up with something so extraordinary, so destructive, that if I had written this up as a fictional novel, no one would believe it. I've got to start by talking about his plans for the invasion and occupation of Gaza.
Yeah. Um, so much going on this week, Dad. We've got Elon Musk and Doge and their seeming takeover of the federal government. We've got Trump's tariffs, and then Trump's tariffs disappear. And then just before we go live, we have all of this. Do you want to start with your discussion of Gaza and Trump's new proposal?
I've got to start with that because it's so extraordinary.
Before you
You know,
start, I just want to do one quick thing. I believe we are now streaming on Twitch. So if you're
that is,
what you don't know what that is, but if you're on
I don't,
Twitch, we should be up there. Start chatting in the chat. Give me a thumbs up if you're on the Twitch channel. That would be great. All right, Dad, go ahead.
so remember, Trump campaigned attacking Biden for wars like Ukraine and the Middle East that we weren't even involved in. There were no American troops on the ground, no American casualties, but he blamed Biden for those wars. Now he is proposing starting a war of his own with no authority to do so, that would deeply involve American troops, that would cause American casualties, Palestinian casualties, and make us a pariah in the world. A minor little thing like that. What he is proposing is America invade Gaza. He has no authority to do so, and Congress is not going to give him a declaration of war. They're not going to even give him a resolution that enables him to do it. The UN is not going to give him authority. But leave aside the legalities. Think of how coruscatingly catastrophic this would be. We invade Gaza. We will become involved in an urban war against Hamas, who clearly said they don't want us here. It's going to cause American casualties, more Palestinian casualties, more destruction in the Middle East. And it is a throwback to the worst days of European imperialism when white nations took over parts of the Middle East and, irrespective of the wishes of the inhabitants of those areas, redrew the map of the Middle East. Example of that is Iraq, which is an artificial country created by Britain that has three incompatible peoples. You know who they are, Sam? Who are the
Um,
three incompatible groups in Iraq?
the three incompatible groups in Iraq. No, I don't.
Shia,
Oh, the
the Sunni,
Sunni.
and the Kurds.
Right.
So this is an absolute, he wants to go back to the age of William McKinley, the age of imperialism. Now that's exactly what he wants to do, recreate the worst elements of European imperialism, put Americans in harm's way, put Palestinians in harm's way, and undermine our standing throughout the world. He says, when says something like this, he's lying. Well, everyone supports this, just like everyone, he said, supported the overturning of Roe versus Wade, when over 60% in every poll opposed that. I don't know who he's talking about, everybody supporting this, but this is, one of the worst proposals, directly contrary to what Trump has promised upon becoming president.
Wait, I'm
Involved.
confused. He's actually said that he's going to send troops into Gaza, or I'm confused what he wants to do exactly. He wants
Yes,
to.
he wants to send troops and occupy Gaza. There's no other way we take over Gaza. They're not just going to invite us in. Remember, we thought the Iraqis would just invite us in with flowers and, you know, uh, shortcakes. It doesn't work that way. The only way America takes over Gaza is through a military invasion.
Oh, I didn't realize
People
that
of
he was.
Gaza are not going to invite us. And then he wants, if we take it over, and I'm not sure, how much bloodshed that's going to take, if it would ever even work, he wants to displace 1.8 million Gazans against their will to some unspecified place. He never told us a single country that would be willing to take them. It would be a whole other thing if Gazans wanted to go, say, all right, we've had enough here. We want to go elsewhere. Egypt or Jordan and those countries willingly accepted them. That would be a whole other matter, that might diffuse the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But this is just the opposite of that. It's forced military occupation and forced ethnic cleansing. One of the most condemned policies in the modern world. Moreover, Trump said, oh, we're going to turn, you know, Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East. It'll be so magnificent. I guess claiming he is this wonderful developer of all these extraordinary properties and is going to bring those skills to Gaza. The truth is, virtually every project that Trump was involved in developing crashed and burned, and for many investors cost them their money. And for the most part, Trump walked away unscathed. These are projects in Florida, in Canada, in Hawaii, in Mexico, in Puerto Rico, in Brazil. I can go on and on about Trump's flop as a developer and this notion that his skills are going to bring us the Riviera in this devastated place of Gaza is so ridiculous. Let me just give you a couple of examples. Trump Tower Tampa, that he partnered with a local company. He announced that the Trump Tower would be, quote, so spectacular that it will redefine both Tampa's skyline and the market's expectations of luxury. Pretty much, in somewhat different words, what he said he's going to do in the Riviera. And lots of people bought uh, into this project because of Trump's promotion. Do you know what happened, Sam?
I do not.
Structural problems, cost overruns, and a lack of financing doomed the project. At the end, buyers gaped at nothing more than a vacant lot in Tampa. Exactly the same thing happened with Trump Tower, Fort Lauderdale. Trump said, it is great, with great pleasure that I announce my latest development, Trump International Hotel and Tower, Fort Lauderdale. This magnificent oceanfront resort offers the finest and most luxury experience I have created. Again, Trump's name and endorsement cost people to buy into it. And what happened? Crashed and burned. Nothing but a hole in the ground ultimately. So this notion that this great builder who couldn't even succeed in Tampa and Florida in 100 times more difficult conditions in Gaza is suddenly going to turn it after an American occupation into the Riviera. This proposal is toxic at so many levels that it astounds me that even Trump would put it forth.
Yeah, I don't really know a whole lot about it. I literally just saw like a headline right before we went live about it, but sounds pretty crazy. But then again, a lot of things that Trump does sounds pretty crazy. All
But
right.
this is particularly destructive. It will cost American lives. It will cost Palestinian lives. It will disrupt the most unstable region of the world. It will make us a pariah around the world. It is a throwback to the worst days of racist European imperialism. I can go on. This isn't a minor, Trump slip of the tongue. This is, one of the worst proposals that a modern American president has made.
Interesting. Okay.
All right,
Well,
let's talk about the tariffs.
they were here, then they were gone, Dad. What the heck?
Well, some of them are still here.
Oh,
You know, Trump was proposing tariffs against Canada and Mexico that had the potential to devastate their economies as well as hurt the American economy, but not as much as the weaker economies of Canada and Mexico. It was essentially the nuclear option of sanctions, short of an invasion. There's not much that Trump could do that would be worse for Canada and Mexico. At the last minute, he withdrew the tariffs, at least temporarily for 30 days. We don't know what's going to happen after that. Who knows with Trump? Confusion reigns, and that's a problem unto itself. But he claimed he got big concessions from Mexico and Canada. But the devil is always in the details. And does Trump pay attention to details, Sam?
no.
No, he just wants to proclaim a win. Well, for the nuclear option, for something as severe as these tariffs, he should have gotten huge concessions. Instead, he got what amounted to the set of cookware as the consolation prize for someone on a big quiz show. And I know a lot about quiz shows, having done it myself. Got almost nothing. Yeah, Mexico has proposed 10,000 troops on the border. Guess what they have now?
10,000 troops at the border.
I think maybe even more than 10,000 troops on the border. Got nothing. Symbolic and some other symbolic moves, but, almost nothing given the magnitude of the threat. Same thing with Canada. Canada said, "Oh, we're going to spend 1.3 billion on border security." They had already pledged to spend that. It was absolutely nothing new that Canada was proposing. And how much fentanyl do you know comes through Canada, Sam?
Like 1% or something like that.
Way under 1%.
Oh, really?
Point 0.2%. Even if they stopped every drop of fentanyl coming through, I'm not sure it would be drops, but every ounce of fentanyl coming through, it would make absolutely no difference for the fentanyl market. And the number of migrants coming across the northern border, it's not 0.2%, but it's a very few percent, and again would make very little difference. So for this nuclear option of these, crippling tariffs, he got almost nothing in return except the chance to say it's a big win for me. And the experts in the field are beginning to catch up on
Yeah.
the scam this is.
More and more, what's interesting me about Trump is, obviously we have to point out the ridiculous logic and series of events. I get this. He put on these tariffs, then he took them back because he got all these promises that weren't real But like, why? The thing that is interesting to me now is, why is he doing this? Like, why put on tariffs, get no promises extra from these countries, and then take them all? Like, what are they thinking behind the scenes?
Couple of things. One, he wants to show that he is the international bully, that he's the boss, that he could push around these other nations. And two, remember what all Trump cares about is adulation and credit. And, he and his supporters are claiming, a big victory. You see, I did what Biden wouldn't do. I used American power to fight the fentanyl epidemic and secure our borders. By the way, we've talked about this before. How much money over 50 years have we spent on the war on drugs?
Who knows? Billions, trillions.
Oh, no, trillions,
Yeah,
trillions of dollars. And what good has it done?
not much.
Not much, because you cannot solve the drug problem by trying to cut off the supply. That doesn't work. William Burroughs, the great author in the 1950s, wrote an incredible novel pointing all of this out called Naked Lunch. Basically, as long as there is infinite demand, there will be infinite supply. You cut it off at one point, it'll come in at another point. And now it looks like, for example, some of the authorities in the field have suggested, if you control China to Mexico, it's going to come in through India. Or it will be synthesized in the United States. Remember, fentanyl is a synthetic drug, right? It can be synthesized. Suppliers will find a way so long as there is infinite demand. Even the president of Mexico said this. Look, you're not going to solve this by putting pressure on Mexico. You got to deal with what's going on in your own country. And if 50 years of wasted trillions haven't taught us that, I don't know what the answer is.
Right. And I see what you're saying in terms of Trump wanted to look like the tough guy, use American power, but he didn't get anything out of it. That's what I don't understand. But nothing, I understand if that happened, but that didn't even happen. Nothing happened. I just don't get
But he
it.
claims victory. That's all he cares about. And you and I and other experts will unravel the details, but how many Americans, particularly his base, will go through the fine
Right.
print of
Yeah.
what Mexico said? Oh, Mexico and Canada caved into Trump. They agreed to secure the borders, to
Right.
keep fentanyl out, to keep the migrants out. What a great thing. They're not going to look at the details of what went on here. Plus, now you see it, now you don't. But there is one place where you still see it. Where is that, Sam?
China.
China, a huge exporter to the U.S. He's kept the 10% tariff on China. And every expert in the field says, who is that going to hurt?
The U.S. consumer.
Yeah, particularly, the less affluent persons that voted for Trump. It's not going to hurt Trump and Musk or Jeff Bezos, whoever you pronounce his name. It's going to hurt ordinary Americans. In fact, if you look at everything that Trump has done, he hasn't done one thing to help ordinary Americans. Where he said, I'm going to bring those grocery prices down significantly on day one. In fact, what he's doing is going to raise grocery prices, right? When you slap on tariffs, American consumers pay and the prices go up. Look what other things he's done to hurt ordinary Americans. Wiping out critical health information coming out of the government, putting a crimp in research for horrific diseases like cancer and stroke and heart disease, trying to gut the federal workforce. We hate our government, we hate the workers, but boy, when there's a tragedy, when there's an air crash, when there's a hurricane, when there's a tornado, they expect their government to be right there. Plus, cutting back on government spending, that's not going to hurt Musk and Trump. They don't depend on that. Who is that going to hurt when you cut back on government aid programs in the United States?
Regular people.
Regular people who depend on food stamps or Medicaid or housing aid or Social Security. Those are the people who are going to be hurt. So, it's been whatever else you may think of all the illegal authoritarian things he's done, he hasn't done a thing to help his voters and done so many things that's only going to hurt them and help his billionaire friends. Gutting the Consumer Finance Protection Board, that's going to help the big banks with their predatory lendings and other organizations that do predatory lending or violate standards because there'll be no check on them. Is that going to help ordinary Americans, who have credit cards or bank loans? No, it's going to help the billionaires who control the banking system. I can go on and on. And, the media is very complicit in this. We had a whole show. Stop calling Trump a populist. He is an elitist. He is an oligarch. He is the opposite of populism, which challenges the big corporations, challenges the billionaires, uses the power of government on behalf of ordinary Americans to limit the damage that can be done by the big corporations and the billionaires.
I have a
Final point
wait.
I
Hold
want
on.
to
Hold on.
make.
Hold on. I have a question. Again, I keep asking myself in this time why. Trump and his allies and all. These guys are uber capitalists. They're billionaires. I don't really understand their stance of this anti-globalist trade and market movement because, I mean, one, I just think that the world was always going to move to a global market. It's kind of just human nature, and the fact that America was not going to be part of that global market. I mean, what do we want to be, Cuba? You know what I mean? But
Yeah, all right, or North Korea.
right, but why is Trump and all his rich friends so obsessed with, tariffs and this anti-globalist trade perspective? I don't. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Doesn't make any sense to me either. Not only is it bad economics, it contradicts their ideology. What are they always telling us? We're for free enterprise. We believe in the magic of the market. We don't want government involved in enterprise. And of all policies, tariffs are probably, certainly, if not the worst anti-market intervention a government can do. It's close. It's not far from that, because it favors some industries over another artificially. It clogs international trade routes. It clogs supply chains. It makes it very difficult, both domestically and across the globe, to have a free market. So not only is it bad economics, it's contrary to everything that Trump and Republicans and conservatives claim to stand for. It's baffling. It's hard to figure out why Trump does what he does. A
Yeah,
lot of it I can figure out, but this one, I guess he just wants to show how powerful he is.
but I think it was you who said that he's been targeting tariffs for like 40 years, like long before he entered the
This is
political.
true, and
So there has to be
he
some
doesn't believe in globalism. He believes, like conservatives have for so long, in an internal American marketplace. He talks about American energy independence, having everything manufactured here so we don't have to buy anything from nations abroad. That's mercantilism. That's an outmoded 18th century ideology. He talks about going back to the 1890s, the age of imperialism. Well, in some ways, he wants to go back to the 1790s, the age of mercantilism.
Yeah. I mean, look, there are certainly issues with globalism. I'm not sitting here trying to defend
Of
globalism
course.
largely, but it's kind of the type of thing, again, it's like, I think if you were to rewind the tape and play the movie of Earth a million times, we would always end up in some sort of globalist market. It's just kind
Of
of
course.
the nature
That's
of,
where free markets lead you.
right, exactly. It's like, I don't really understand it. And it was funny because my roommate was saying that he was talking to this big farmer guy the other day who was like a huge Trumper and talking about his economic policy. It's like, this guy works for the pharmaceutical company. The reason they are so rich is because of globalism. They
Of
wouldn't,
course.
right? So I just don't understand it
Yes.
logically.
I
But
don't either. All right.
anyways,
The last point I want to make,
yes.
and I'm not being hyperbolic here.
Don't be.
We are in the midst of a coup.
Really.
Yes. Donald Trump and his ally Elon Musk are using authoritarian methods and powers to take over our government. Who elected Elon Musk?
Nobody.
Who appointed Elon Musk to a position officially approved by the US Senate?
Don't remember any appointment hearings of Elon Musk.
Right. But he is acting as if he is the consigliere of a mafia family headed by Donald Trump. He and his so-called secret, army of people 19 to 24 years old are trying to shut down USAID, which is established by Congress and can only be shut down by Congress, does us immense good around the world. Leave it aside the humanitarian good it does, clean water, fighting disease, promoting democracy, building good housing, leaving all that aside, all the humanitarian benefits, which Trump and Musk couldn't care less about. It brings us tremendous goodwill around the world. And there has been so much disinformation on this that most Americans believe, get this, that 1/3 of our budget goes to foreign aid. What's the truth, Sam? Do you know what percentage of the budget goes to foreign aid?
I don't know, but I'm thinking a tiny
One,
percentage. Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
1%. It's a 3,000% exaggeration. I know you don't like me talking about disinformation, but it's
That's
here.
not true. Oh
I
my
know,
God.
I know.
Stop saying that.
It's here and it's real. And Musk has no business shutting down government agencies. He has even less business accessing through his minions sensitive information on government payouts. And that means you get all kinds of supposedly private information about more than 100 million Americans, anyone who gets any kind of government payment, including someone like me who's old and gets Social Security, anyone who gets food stamps, Medicaid, housing aid, you get all their private information. And here is Elon Musk, the consigliere who has no formal authority to do it, barging into our government and demanding access to the sensitive information and then getting fired the courageous, righteous officials who tried to deny him that. Moreover, he said, if you release the names of these also unelected, unappointed minions that I use, that's a crime. What? And the Trumper attorney, acting attorney, U.S. attorney in D.C., who defended January 6th insurrectionists, has actually threatened to prosecute those who release the names of Musk minions who are invading our government without authority, with huge damage to American citizens, uh, as part of a coup to take over the government by decree. How many of Trump's initiatives, you know, respect to deportation, AID, uh, birthright citizenship, invading Gaza, how many of those initiatives have gone properly through the constitutional process through Congress?
None.
None. They've all been done by imperial executive authority, the hallmark of authoritarianism. That's why I'm saying it is not an exaggeration to say we are in the midst of a coup. And it's a five-alarm fire for America. And unless we take drastic action, it's going to be over. We're going to go into the dustbin of
What
history
what
as a failed democracy.
but what drastic action are we supposed to be taking? I mean, it seems like, hold on, it seems like Congress is letting Trump and Elon literally just take control of their entire government. They don't seem to be interested in doing any checks, any balances, follow any procedure. So what the hell are we supposed to do?
You're correct. And again, the media has it all wrong. It's not that they're afraid of Trump, why they're, rubber stamping manifestly unqualified nominees like RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, at some of the most important departments and agencies of our government. Yeah, they are afraid of Trump, but it's worse than that. They agree with Trump.
Right.
That's what makes it so dangerous. Trump disappeared tomorrow. Yeah, it would be a big blow to the right because you need a appealing face, but it wouldn't change the ideology within the Republican Party, which is to seize power by and hold power by any means possible. Remember I've said one sentence defines our politics. Democrats have no spine, Republicans have no principles, as they have been proving every day of, the last 2 or 3 weeks. It's time for Democrats to get a spine and do everything in their power to deal with this. Now, you ask, what could people do? I have made some suggestions before. Email your senator, your congressman, even
Not
your
gonna
city
work.
council
Not
member.
gonna
I
work.
know that's not enough.
That's soft as shit.
If you have legal expertise, join in the lawsuits. Vote with your feet. Get out and join the demonstrations. All of that isn't enough. That's why I'm asking our audience here and now, and I know how smart our audience is, what can we do to combat the coup? Very simple question.
I don't think anybody's gonna have an answer to that, Dad. I don't think
No,
any.
if anyone does, it's our audience. How many do we have?
We have 2,000 people watching.
Oh, nice. So that's 2,000 brilliant people. Maybe we'll get something of an answer.
The thing that baffles me is, if Trump really wanted to drain the swamp and fix Washington, he wouldn't be going after these small bureaucratic agencies and these everyday Americans who work for them, right? He'd be going after lobbyists, super PACs, special interest groups, big money in Washington. Those are
Oh,
the
all his constituents.
But that's my point.
All the
That's my
people he
point.
represents.
That's my point is when you hear these talking points from these right wingers saying Trump is trying to fix Washington, he's trying to drain the swamp, tell him then he should be going after lobbyists. He should be going after special interest groups. He should be going after big money. He should be going after super PACs. Going after everyday civil servants is not going to fix Washington. It's not going to drain the swamp.
It's going to make it worse.
Right.
Place competent, apolitical civil servants with incompetent sycophants. And, Trump says, oh, we're going to abolish DEI and we're going to operate solely on merit. And he has appointed the least meritorious. I don't care whatever standard you want to look at, the least meritorious group of high officials in the modern history of the country. As I've said before, we now have affirmative action for Trump loyalists. Plus, this whole attack on DEI is completely misguided. White people are not discriminated against. They are still the overwhelming majority in the Congress, in state legislatures, and city councils, except in, heavily minority areas. They control most of our economy. It's, a complete myth of, this reverse discrimination. And DEI does not establish reverse discrimination. You explained this, I think, in the last show. It simply opens up opportunities to a wider range of talent to enable people who were previously excluded to be considered along with those who have held privilege for hundreds of years in this country. It expands. It doesn't shrink the pool of talent.
Yeah, I just
And,
feel like
this whole idea of the deep state didn't start with Trump. It's actually a left-wing idea developed, decades ago. And as you say, the deep state, as it's analyzed properly, is not, the bureaucrats in Washington. It is the moneyed interests that make contributions that essentially buy off politicians. It's the lobbyists. It's the PACs. It's the super PACs. It's the very rich who evade taxes and put their money in offshore accounts. That's the deep state. Donald
right,
Trump is
right.
the deep state. In fact, he's bragged, before he became president about how he controlled politicians by giving them big contributions. That is quintessentially the deep state.
Right. I guess my issue is, I just feel like I'm watching so many clips from news shows and stuff, and all those Republicans are going on and saying, again, this great messaging, Trump's cleaning up Washington, he's draining the swamp, he's fixing all these problems, and Democrats or just not right-wing commentators just kind of try to argue these semantic points about whether it's legal that Elon does this or does that. But why don't they just say, no, he's not. He's literally not draining the swamp. If he wanted to drain the swamp, he'd have to do these actions. He's not doing them. The people he is targeting are not part of the swamp. They're not causing corruption in Washington. Nobody's fighting back on these core points, and it's frustrating.
It's very frustrating. Yes, Trump is doing a lot of illegal things, and that's fine. But unless you develop a message that, as you say, frontally challenges what Trump is doing and can resonate with ordinary Americans, and, this message that we've been talking about, I think is a very effective one, far more effective than anything Democrats have been doing to this point. We're going to have a whole show, and we're going to bring on your brilliant mom, who's one of the nation's leading political organizers. We're going to have a whole show on messaging.
I have a question for you, just playing devil's advocate for a second. What would you say to an American who voted for Trump, who likes Elon Musk, and says to you, Allan, this is exactly what I wanted to happen. I voted for Trump. He and Elon promised to get in there and make sweeping, massive cuts to our bureaucracy. I like this. Why should I be angry about this?
Agreed. People, not everyone. A lot of it, I said, was based on vast disinformation and not understanding. But Trump's base, not the whole 49.5%, but 40% of it absolutely thinks that. and you're probably never going to change them, except to say, yes, you voted for change. You wanted things to be shaken up, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And he's doing it the wrong way
Right.
in a way that hurts you and does not help you. I doubt if that's going to crack his base, but that other 10% that voted for him might be persuaded by that kind of argument.
Maybe, yeah. I would hope so. It's interesting because, the right and Elon himself and Trump have been painting Elon as this great manager and this great budgeter. I mean, essentially what he's doing is he's going into these agencies with his eyes closed and just kind of swinging a weed whacker around and see what he hits. He's not having any sort of thoughtful analysis of what needs to be cut and what doesn't need to be cut.
Not even close to that. Absolutely right. And as I've said many times, if you believe Elon Musk is out for you rather than himself, then I've got a big bridge in my hometown of Brooklyn I'll sell you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just all so crazy and mind-boggling, and there's so many layers to this. I mean, Doge doesn't even exist within our government, so I don't
No, he
understand.
has no formal
Right?
authority of any kind.
I don't
And
get
this
it.
is what authoritarians do. They go in with the weed whacker. They go in with the sledgehammer just to destroy things so that they can maintain their power. There's another point to all of this. You know, a lot of what Trump is doing is the culture war, and that's very persuasive to a lot of Americans. But it's a distraction. It's a way you go after, the gays and the lesbians and the transgenders. They're tiny percentages of our population. And that distracts from what Trump is doing that hurts the vast majority of our population.
And the other
It's
crazy thing is,
flash and bombast and distraction. And Trump is good at several things: bullying, delaying, deflecting, and distraction. He is a master of those four arts.
yeah, the other crazy thing is Elon has no security clearance. And that's the thing with
I
what Trump,
know, and he wants the sensitive information.
right? And that's the thing about how Trump has been operating, which is, I mean, from his perspective, kind of smart. He's he's appointed through executive word, not even order, but through executive order, he's appointed Elon to this obscure sort of sounding title, right? Which is nobody really knows
Has
what
no
that.
official standing.
Right, but then again, it's kind of smart from his perspective because it's
Yes,
so
very
vague.
smart.
Right,
To
because it's
make
so
this up.
right because it's
That's
so
what give him
vague. No one knows how to handle it or if it's
Yeah.
illegal. So he's appointed him through word to this vague title. Then he's made an executive order saying that he can put people into power without any sort of security clearance or background check. So he's made the waters a lot more muddy than anybody could have ever expected, and that's why I think Republicans are sort of letting this happen, because they're saying like, oh, Trump made an executive order saying we don't have to give security clearances to people, so technically Elon can do what he wants.
And again, I would stress for the Republicans, it's not just that they're afraid of Trump, it's that they agree with him. The
Right.
Republican Party is the MAGA party. Look at the so-called moderates. What are there? Maybe two or three now left in the Senate. And guess what? You know, Susan Collins, supposedly the biggest moderate, comes out and votes for, I think it was RFK Jr. Come on. If she's, the left wing of the Republican Party, there is no left wing.
Right. And I'm not saying any of these things that he's doing, appointing Elon Musk this obscure position, making no background checks. I'm not saying that any of this is legal, but he's muddied the waters so much that it gives the Republicans excuse to put their hands up and be like, we have no checks and balances that we have to do here.
Exactly. Exactly so. Do we get any suggestions?
It's hard to monitor the chat and talk, and I couldn't. Let me see if I can scroll up and see if there's
Take a
anything.
minute and see
Here,
if
how
we
about
have.
this? How about this? Savannah, if you're listening, make a community post and right now and put in it, what are your suggestions for what's your exact question? What's your suggestion for?
What are the most effective ways of dealing with Trump or stopping Trump?
Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Savannah. Yeah, and also I'm seeing all these right-wing talking heads saying, kind of like what I posed to you. a lot of these people want this. This is what Trump voted on. But just because you're voted into power doesn't mean that you can corrupt your own power or
Yeah, and it's not clear that that's what they voted on. I thought the two things they voted on, and, I'm not buying this, but according to the polls, exit polls, immigration, fair enough, grocery prices and everything Trump is doing is going to increase, not decrease grocery prices. He didn't vote for that.
no. I don't know. It's just, there's so many layers to this, and logically, it's like I feel tugged both ways in both directions. But yeah, there's no doubt that what is happening is an abuse of power, to say the least. Whether it's illegal or not, we may never know, and there may never be any ramifications. But it's
Here's what Trump
certainly
is betting on. He knows what he's doing pushes the boundaries of legality. Number one, he doesn't care because no one has ever held him accountable, not just as a politician, but in over 50 years as a politician and businessman. He's never been held accountable. All those multiple failed projects he walks away from. And it's the poor suckers, for the most part, who invested in them who get hurt. He doesn't get hurt at all or only gets hurt very minimally. He had all these bankruptcies and always someone else, not Trump, left holding the bag. So he believes he can do anything he wants and he'll never be held accountable. If he wasn't held accountable for January 6th or stealing our national secrets, what in the world is he going to be held accountable to? Two,
nothing.
he knows, for the most part, he's going to fail in the courts, but he's hoping these things will go up to the Supreme Court. And just as they gave him humanity, rewrote the 14th Amendment to let him be on the Colorado ballot, just as they overturned 50 years of precedent to overrule Roe versus Wade, he is betting that they won't care about precedent and will go along with him and make legal the things he's doing. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but that's what I think he's also betting on.
This is another thing that boggles my mind. It seems to me that this whole Elon takeover of computer systems, the public social security numbers, the treasury, et cetera, is maybe one of the biggest breaches of privacy in U.S. history. You know what I mean?
It's the biggest breach of privacy in U.S. history.
But
nothing is close.
Again, hold on. Let me finish my thought.
Yeah, sure.
And there's this core conservative value. I'm not saying Republicans actually follow it, because obviously the George Bush administration didn't follow this at all. But there's this core conservative value that, we need these strong privacy rights. We need the government's boot off our necks, hand out of our cookie jar. And yet, again, doesn't seem to be any backlash from the right wing. The fact that all of our privacy has been compromised within the last 2 weeks or so.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
Recommend everyone to my next book. It should be out next couple of months, called Conservative at the Core, A New History of American Conservatism. And it proves all of those things that conservatives claim they stand for. Limited government, fiscal responsibility, free market, strict construction of the Constitution. None of them actually represent what Republicans and conservatives actually stand for, which is private enterprise, not free enterprise, and their own version of what they regard as traditional Christian values. All these other things are put out for public consumption and abandoned at their convenience.
But I think if you talk to your average Trump voter and you ask them generally about privacy, government intervention, they would all, be strong believers in strong privacy rights. Again, what I just said. So I'm not even really talking about
this, even though they don't really represent it ever. It wasn't just Bush. Look at the McCarthy era.
No. Hold on. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm not talking about politicians. I'm not talking about Republicans in power. I'm talking about your average American Trump voter.
I agree. And my point is they've sold this to the average voter, not just under Trump, but throughout the last 100 years. Republicans have sold this bill of goods about free enterprise, privacy, fiscal responsibility, limited government, and constantly violated it. What was the biggest in the 1920s, the biggest imposition of big government in the history of the country to that point? Prohibition, right? And what's the biggest imposition today? Attacking reproductive freedom. All of that smashes limited government, fiscal responsibility, privacy. What's the biggest uh, subversion of free markets? Tariffs. And, tariffs go back to William McKinley in the 1890s and beyond. They've been a staple of conservatism throughout, as has all these other things.
Yeah, it's just
Let's get
frustrating.
questions.
Hold on, Dad. Chill, chill. We're having a conversation. People are liking it. You don't need to bulldoze through the episode.
Oh, you're
Um,
accusing me of bulldozing.
yes. Yeah, I don't know. It's
Ask
just
your elders.
I, I let you talk 95% of the episode.
Ahead.
Yeah, it's just frustrating to me that doesn't seem like anybody in America is willing to stick to their ideological morality, their ideological compass. You know what I mean? It's just whoever they support, whatever party they're on, they'll twist and squirm to make, their ideology fit their party, the candidate they support, and they don't just support morality or basic ideology anymore. It's really frustrating.
I can understand that. I teach American political history, and I have Lichtman laws of politics. And one of the Lichtman laws of politics is whenever a politician claims they're motivated by principle, strict construction of the Constitution, limited government, you know, keep a close watch on your wallet because that's nothing more than a disguise for hard politics.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we get into our Q&A portion of this episode, Dad?
I'm done.
I'm done. A few housekeeping notes. Kara Swisher, Dad, I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but Kara Swisher has been rescheduled. She was supposed to come on this Thursday. She will now be on Tuesday, February 11th. So mark your calendars for that one. If you're watching, we got 2,000 people, almost 2,000 people watching. If you're watching, give us a like, subscribe, turn on that bell so you know that we're live. Don't forget that we're also on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Remember, donations and memberships get priority in questions. That helps us pay our bills on this channel. You can follow us on social media at Allan Lichtman, at Allan_Lichtman, and at Sammy Licht. Anything I forgot to add, Dad?
Yes. Do we have another guest coming in?
Yes, but we have another guest. We'll talk about that Thursday. I think
He's
it's
coming in after Kara Swisher.
yes. I can't remember who it is off the top of my head, but yes, we
Yeah, I
do
was
have
very
another.
excited about this other guest who's apparently an expert in disinformation, the world's leading expert. It's going to be a really exciting show. And I'm
Really,
excited about Kara Swisher too, who's an expert in, technology and communication, which plays such a huge part of what's going on today.
right. Maybe she can give us more insight into Elon too, because I know she's interviewed him and written a lot about him. So maybe she has some stuff that we don't even know.
I'm sure she does.
Yeah. Our guest next Thursday is Dr. Renee DiResta. She's the misinformation expert.
She's written a whole book on it.
Yeah.
And she's, really maybe the nation's leading authority in disinformation. She's going to have all kinds of insights that we don't have and will greatly add to the value of her show. When's she coming on?
I think next Thursday. So
A week from this Thursday.
the 13th.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay. Getting into questions. This is from Brahim Azeni. They say, love your show. Saw the news, then saw you were live. Trump just said today that he wants the U.S. to take ownership of the Gaza Strip. I was curious on what that would mean for the future of the Middle East.
Disaster. It would, ignite another war in the Middle East with more destruction in Gaza, more Palestinian deaths, and American deaths on large scale for the first time. And God knows, what's going to happen with Israel, whether they're going to get involved in the war and you'll have Israeli deaths. It will make America a pariah, not just in the Arab world for what we're doing, killing Palestinians, but throughout the world for this kind of essentially illegal against, the UN Charter, I believe, without authority from Congress, uh, this illegal military land grab.
Member Brady Engen says, even though Trump backed off the tariffs at the last minute, wouldn't you say he is doing major damage to the United States' international relations and credibility regarding trade?
Absolutely. He thinks, oh, it's good to keep the nations of the world off balance. They're not going to know what I'm going to do, so they're going to bend to my will. And that's a very perverse way of looking at the international order. We need cooperation from our allies and our trade partners, not fear and apprehension. One sign of this, I don't know if you've seen this at sporting events in Canada. The Canadians who used to cheer Americans, welcome them, are now booing the American teams just because they're American.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something new. I mean, it's a little thing, but it's indicative of something much bigger.
Member Chris Wallace says, according to sources I've read, the McKinley tariffs raised consumer prices on some items. The sources I have found on the overall inflation at the time show a low inflation rate. Can you explain what sectors of the economy were impacted by the McKinley tariffs and the long-term effects of the policy?
Yeah, uh, the exporting segment and the agricultural segment were the ones most affected by the McKinley tariffs. But let's not forget the McKinley tariffs occurred at a time of deflation. There had been a long period of deflation in the late 19th century. So it's not that the McKinley tariffs resulted in a reduction or a stabilization of prices. Plus, you cannot compare the economy of the 1890s when we were much less involved in the global economy to the economy today. It's an absolute false comparison.
With RFK Jr. likely confirmed, what's going to happen to the field of medical research? Is there any way around whatever horrid policies he wants to implement?
Not easily. I mean, he really controls the levers of health policy in terms of research, in terms of information, in terms of what he tells the American people. Again, yeah, we could try to get around it. There are lots of private health organizations, lots of outstanding doctors, but do not underestimate the pernicious effect that RFK Jr. is going to have on our health. Remember, this is a purveyor of quack science. He caused, or at least contributed to, 86 deaths in the tiny island of Samoa. And the leading politician of Samoa just said he blatantly lied to the Senate about his role in Samoa when his, joining the anti-vax movement resulted in a drop of vaccinations and 86 deaths. And I think we projected that out a number of weeks ago to the U.S. population, and it would be hundreds of thousands of children's deaths. It wasn't just a minor thing. And that's not the only way in which he promotes quack science. He's promoted things like quack cures for COVID-19. Uh, and he supposedly had all of these doctors, countering all the health professionals who wrote against him. Many of them were not doctors, and many of them had lost their licenses to practice medicine because they were quacks like RFK Jr. I cannot tell you the damage that he could do.
Yeah, I don't think any Trump nominee. I think all Trump nominees are getting through at this point. I don't think any are going to
Of
be
course,
blocked.
as
Yeah.
I said, it's not just fear, it's they agree with him. They're
Yeah.
with him.
I don't know. I saw a clip of Susan Collins either yesterday or the day before talking about Tulsi Gabbard, and I don't know. She was just so weak. She was like, "Yep, she convinced me." And it's like, I don't know. Again, like you can say anything in a hearing. Like,
You can say anything you want. Clarence Thomas said, I'm a moderate, don't worry. And he turned out to be, until Alito came aboard, the most conservative justice in modern times. Kavanaugh, seemed to indicate, oh, no, 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 I'm not interested in, overturning precedent on, abortion right. You can say whatever you want. And what does it matter once you get the job, Sam?
Diddly.
Italy. Well put.
$15 donation from Vincent Thomas. They say, Professor, before Trump's term is over, do you think he's going to get the United States into a major conflict or war internationally? And why do you think he is fixated with McKinley right now?
Because McKinley was associated with two things that Trump seems to want to do. Number one, tariffs, and number two, imperialism. Remember, it was on McKinley's watch that we fought what war, Sam? Do you know?
On McKinley's watch, we fought the Spanish-American War.
You got it.
Oh, really?
And what did we get?
Holy shit.
Among other things? Puerto
Puerto Rico? Yeah.
And the Philippines.
Right.
And to keep the Philippines, what happened?
I don't know.
The American-Filipino War in the early 20th century, one of the most bloody, awful, racist wars that America has ever fought. Is that a model that we want to follow?
Not me, sir.
And of course, eventually we gave up the Philippines, and we never have given Puerto Rico, right, the benefit of becoming a state.
Right. Ivana Tinkle says, it's a funny name. Is Trump
Don't
going
make
to...
fun of people's names.
Good point. Is Trump going to start a draft? A draft he dodged? If he does draft, guess who's going to get drafted first? Young men that voted for Trump.
That's correct. No doubt about it. I have no idea whether he's going to start a draft. Nothing Trump would do would surprise me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I can't speculate,
That's a
whether he would or not, but if he did, it would be less shocking than invading Gaza, frankly.
that's
Although,
I don't know. That's a pretty big
I don't
leap in events. Like we're not even in a war, so like I don't know.
I know, you're right. You can't even grade all the things that Trump has done.
Right. Will Trump have foreign policy success due to what he is doing in Panama in regards to China's access to the canal?
No, the canal is open to everyone as long as you pay the fees. It's not like China controls access to the canal. Maybe they'll have less investments in the canal area, but that's not a huge foreign policy splashy triumph like winning a war or the Camp David Accords.
Do you think Trump will use military force to take the canal?
He's implied that, but you never know with Trump. I don't want to speculate. I certainly hope not. He did campaign on, not getting us involved in the wars. He blasted Biden for wars in which America wasn't even fighting. But he seems to be very bellicose about emulating William McKinley and engaging in imperialistic wars.
Bellicose. I've never even heard that word before.
Wow, warlike.
Wow, that's a good word.
Yeah. Keep that in mind.
Member Carol Hannon says, if Trump and company do something illegal, for example, gutting the Department of Education, is there any action Congress can take to stop him other than impeachment? Because we know impeachment will go nowhere. Can they separately charge Musk? Thank you both. I know that there's already a lawsuit with a bunch of FBI agents against the federal government. They're trying to sue for unlawful termination. But specifically to that question, Dad.
Yeah, the Congress isn't going to do anything because the Congress is controlled by what party, Sam?
The GOP.
Yeah, the same ones who want to see a purveyor of quack science be chief American health officer, or someone who parrots Russian propaganda be head of our national intelligence. They're not going to, take action against Trump in any regard. So it's got to go through the courts.
Right. Can anything be done to stop Elon? Is there any hope for us from an Elon takeover, Dad, you think, or no?
There's always hope. But that's why I asked our brilliant audience if they have additional ideas to those I've put out to stop what's going on.
Let's
It's
get
a fire on fire.
Let's get to that
We don't
because
have the tools to stop it at this point.
let's get to that because our channel manager Savannah actually posted about that. All right, here is the top comment. This is from Penny Bourbon. They say, in response to, what can be done, what are the most effective ways in dealing with or stopping Trump and his allies. Penny Bourbon says, lawsuits, only way to solve a constitutional crisis.
I've already I've already advocated for that. Absolutely.
Aurora Bass says,
Let me finish.
oh,
And I've advised our audience, if you have legal expertise, join in with that. So we've already emphasized that. Thank you for underscoring that.
let me go through a couple and then you can comment. How about that?
Sure.
Aurora Bass says, protests, lawsuits, and Dems standing up and making noise. Michelle Hernandez says, public opinion and activism matters. Join Indivisible. I'm not sure that's an organization. By voting blue in every election coming forward. We need a way to inform MAGA about the facts. Some sort of social media they were here. And this person says, call your senators. Not a whole lot different from what we've already said. Vote, impeach.
We've already been advocating all that. And I could not emphasize more the importance, not just voting yourself, but getting everyone you know to vote. There was just a special election for a Senate seat, a state Senate seat, that in a district that Trump won by 21 points, and the Democrats won it by 4 points, swung the district by 25 points. That's what can happen when you get out and vote and get everyone you know out to vote.
Yeah. All right. We are now past the hour mark. We didn't get to a lot of questions today because there was just so much to talk about. How many more questions do you want? Or do you want to just... Three more
Are you
questions.
doing Sammy Licht after this?
Yes. The good news is if you want to keep talking and hanging out, the Lichtman Live post show, it will be live right after we end here on my YouTube channel at Sammy Licht. I'll post a link to that in the chat in a moment. All right. Three more questions. Let's see. From Toyota Corolla, they say, hi, Professor, California resident here. I don't know if you've heard, but Trump just ordered the release of 2.2 billion gallons of water for no reason. My state grows most of our fruit and nuts, so I don't know what's going to happen come summertime. Are you familiar with what happened here, Dad?
You're a brilliant mom, one of the nation's leading advocates for combating climate change. Inform me of this. It's just another astonishing action by Trump that's going to hurt ordinary Americans. California needs the water in the reservoirs. Trump squandered to no end. It's going to hurt farmers and other California residents. I think it's 2.2 billion gallons of water just to try to, again, make a political point against Governor Newsom in California. It's virtually a criminal act, in my view. But like everything else, he'll never be held accountable.
This is from Michael Liu. What is the exact scope and powers and limits of executive orders? Right? They're not all powerful, right?
They are not all powerful. They cannot override a law passed by Congress. As much as Trump would like to do something like abolish AID or abolish the Department of Education, an executive order cannot override an act of Congress. You got to go back to Congress and get Congress to act. So it can only act when there is room for the executive to act in a way it does not override or contradict existing law, and it goes through the proper procedures of the administrative act. A lot of Trump's executive orders in his first term were struck down because they didn't go through proper procedure.
No doubt. All right, our last question of the night. I just pinned the Lichtman Live post show into the chat if you want to join me afterwards. All right. Our last question is, do you have any thoughts on Ken Martin as the DNC's new chairman?
I don't really know Ken Martin. I'm glad to say, I guess he's from the Midwest, an area where the Democrats really need to make some much greater inroads than they have, although we have a lot of Democratic governors. Democrats have not done well in presidential elections in Michigan and Wisconsin, for example. So I'm very hopeful about Ken Martin. He seems to be, on the young side, sharp, fresh blood. I'm glad they didn't go to some old warhorse. And he seems to be pretty dynamic. So, I don't want you to take anything I say about him definitively, but superficially, I'm positive.
Gotcha. All right. With that, we will wrap up Lichtman Live for the night. Shout out to our donations: Adam Bryceland, CD, President Belichick, Comic Fan, Be Like Water, Hero 75, Wendy Y, Sean Breen, Sharon Novak, Limited Light, Ashir Tahari, Philip H, Private CM, Junaid Naik, A, SH, the Orange Pill Nurse. Shout out to all of you. Thank you for your donations. Dad, what are your final words to the people on this night, February 4th, 2025?
Make no mistake about it. It's not hyperbolic. We're in the midst of a coup. It's a five-alarm fire for our democracy. And you've heard me say many times, democracy is precious. But like all precious things, it can be destroyed. And it's a very rare, precious value throughout human history. And we are in the midst of the greatest danger to our democracy since the Civil War. And I want to thank you all, for your suggestions on what we can do to preserve our nation.
All right. Thank you, Dad. Thank you everyone from watching. If you want to watch the Lichtman Live post show, the link to that is in the chat, also in the description of this video. See you all on Lichtman Live on Thursday.
Oh, I just want to say,
Yes.
please come in for our guests. They're going to provide information and analyses that are going to be new and fresh and informative to us and everyone in the audience.
New and fresh and informative. Say goodnight to the people, Dad.
Good night. See you Thursday.